Good morning again. My name is Catherine Rodriguez, and I am the lecture director at the Claire Booth Luce Policy Institute. One of the best parts of my job is that I get the honor of working directly with our student activists and leaders on their campuses every day. These women are working so hard to make a difference on their campuses by bringing these conservative women speakers and just in general speaking out about their conservative beliefs. This morning, I have 3 of these student activists with me who will be sharing their experiences with you dealing with the left on their campuses. Some of their stories will surprise and shock you, but it is very representative of campuses across the country. Today, I have with me Caroline Carlson from the University of Maryland, College Park, where she is a sophomore. I have Emily Riley, who is a senior at Furman University. And I have Laurel Conrad, who is a junior at Cornell University. Please join me in welcoming these ladies today.
College student, you see so many progressive feminist organizations on campus. But when it comes to conservative women on the campus, you're probably one of our only resources, so I couldn't be more grateful for that. On the surface, one could say that the University of Maryland, College Park, which is my university, seems like a really tolerant, open-minded university. We have an active multicultural center, and we have clubs for students of all backgrounds and creeds. However, no one really tells you that in reality, my university spends thousands of dollars a year in tuition subsidies to combat insensitive language and actually prevent students from saying these awful, crude, racist words such as terrorist and illegal alien. No one really tells you that some of the most intolerant members of our campus actually happen to be faculty members who can't respect someone who disagrees with their philosophy. The campus seems like it prides itself on accepting all types of students, except if you happen to be a conservative-minded one, or more importantly, a female conservative-minded one. Even though the university flaunts and touts its racial diversity, it lacks what seems to be the most important element of an academic environment: intellectual diversity. If you champion conservative causes, defend free markets, and believe that politicians in Washington should care more about issues that affect women from their waist up than their waist down, then you are truly the definition of a minority on campus. As a student leader in my campus's conservative club, I, along with several other members, have experienced the ongoing bias against conservatism that's fueled by the university faculty and the general student body. For instance, in October, my conservative club participated in a tabling event to address the truth about international terrorist Che Guevara. While standing outside of the student union and addressing how freedom and liberty aren't personified by someone who used firing squads to kill anyone who disagreed with him, we weren't surprised that students came up to us yelling about how Che Guevara was a peaceful, enlightened revolutionary. They called my friends and I intolerant racists and stood in front of our table for an hour to prevent passersby from viewing our event. They called us hateful and crude, when in fact, they were the only ones doing the yelling. What was the most surprising, however, was the fact that 2 of the men addressed that they actually weren't students, but staff members for the Nyamburu Multicultural Center, the university's diversity center, which ironically calls itself the Freedom House. It wasn't just common liberal students who were yelling at us for an hour straight, but university staff members who supposedly preach they defend the ideals of diversity and acceptance. Staff members who say they want to fight cultural stereotypes, but did not hesitate once to simply label us as racists. Interestingly, it's members of the university administration that seem to contribute the most to the oppressions conservatives, libertarians, and members of the conservative right face on the campus. For instance, prior to the presidential election, a faculty representative of a sorority reached out to me, and she wanted me to give a presentation about conservative positions in national and local politics. Even though she told me that a representative from a progressive student organization was also going to be there to give a liberal presentation, I was really disappointed and surprised when I walked into that event And I found out that this representative from a progressive student organization actually turned out to be an adult representative in her late 20s, far past college graduation, that worked for the Service Employees International Union, or the SEIU. The presentations ultimately turned into a really heated debate between the both of us. And even though it was interesting to discuss politics with the union representative, I was disheartened that from the start, I was given such an unfair disadvantage. I was played. It's one thing to set a conservative up to debate a fellow student, and it's really another to not let her know that she'll actually be debating someone who's probably professionally certified to incite crowds. The liberal bias that runs rampant on my campus is an immense issue because clubs like Feminists for Sexual Health and Feminists Without Borders, as well as other progressive groups on campus, have hosted and thrown money at speakers like Cornel West and former Communist Party leader Angela Davis, but never sponsor or spend resources on conservative speakers to expose themselves to alternative arguments. Progressive feminists do annual slut walks on the campus where they actually march across the campus mall wearing the least amount of clothing as possible to promote freedom of expression, when the reality is, in my opinion, they actually look more like what you'd see in an episode of Jerry Springer than an actual intellectual discussion. The student government gladly spends tuition subsidies and marketing and promotion efforts for the DREAM Act, as well as Mary Perg, which is a local green public interest group that devotes their time, resources, and efforts on initiatives to ban plastic bottles or tax energy consumption. University staff members easily get away with bullying members of the student body, and diversity on this campus only seems to go as far as the color of your skin. I truly believe that my university, as well as many other universities across this nation, could use a political wake-up call. And I look forward to using resources from the Clare Boothe Luce Policy Institute to host policy-related events and speakers in the future who defy the status quo of campus politics. After all, if my university wants to bring real diversity and social change to my campus, what better way to start than show how being a conservative, a woman, and an outspoken individual couldn't blend more well together. Thank you.
College has offered a plethora of opportunities for me, like so many of you in this room, to flex my activist muscles. Being a conservative activist at Furman University at times feels like I'm a shrimp in a tank of angry, hungry sharks. Not only is my campus conservative organization outnumbered 10-1 against the Tears for Africa and social justice groups, the majority of professors have a leftist agenda. For example, when I was finally able to bring Nani Darwish to my campus for a lecture, we advertised the event with compelling posters, emails, we canvassed the entire campus, and I made sure that our event was regularly advertised on all the social media venues available. I even personally invited my fellow ROTC cadets to join and learn something about Middle Eastern culture beyond what they teach us in military training. I was deeply discouraged when none of the students whom I had invited chose to come to the event. And I found out that apparently professors were openly lobbying against the event, telling students not to attend because Nani was crazy. They said that she was a poor source of information, and they said that she was unqualified to speak on Islam. Hateful responses and chastisement for my vocal beliefs are all in a day's work at Furman. 2 years in a row, I have led our campus conservative club in erecting a 9/11 memorial project, and 2 years in a row, we have been cursed and judged for our flag display. Cars will drive by and shout obscenities, students will ask obnoxious questions or tell us that we need to move on from the issue. It's over, it's done with, the war's over. The Furman Gardeners even removed our flag display and threw out the flags, despite all the hundreds of dollars we spent on the flags, and I cleared I went through all the avenues of clearance to make sure that our flag display would be legal on campus. Sadly, expressing my beliefs in the Furman classroom can be a more heinous threat than field activism. My freshman year, I had a devout Muslim for my foreign policy professor, and he was so devout that he dedicated a 3-week-long unit to studying Islam, complete with, at the end, an invitation to convert. The final assignment was a self-reflection on thoughts concerning world politics, so I chose to write about the treatment of women under Sharia law and our aggressive foreign policy in the Middle East. The professor gave me a C- on the paper and a 0 for the entire semester's participation because my sources were unreliable and full of lies. Last year, I struggled with 2 professors in particular. My Turkish history professor, another Muslim, would not allow me to write a paper on Sharia law and women in the Middle East using Nani Darwish's books because, as he stated, her books are a work of fiction. In my urban politics course, my professor never called on me in class to answer questions or join in the discussion, and this bothered me because that affects my participation grade. So I made an appointment with him, met him in his office, and asked him why he chose not to call on me ever. He told me that simply he already knew what I had to say and he didn't need to hear it. Last summer, I had the good fortune of interning for the Clare Boothe Luce Policy Institute. As part of my internship, I wrote an article about activism for Investors Business Daily. This little article shed light on the ideological battle between conservatives and liberals at Furman, and my professors, needless to say, did not find it amusing at all. One in particular, the chair of the political science department, pulled me aside after class one day and informed me that she was deeply, deeply disappointed because, as she said, the enrollment in the political science department among the freshmen underclass, class of 2014, was really low because parents read my article and didn't want their students enrolling in political science as their major. She also told me that I would be hard-pressed to find professors to write me rec letters for law school because, as she said, they weren't very happy. So I consider that article a great success because it actually made a dent in my campus. But when I leave college this May, I will carry several lessons from my activism. First, I will never back down from my conservative beliefs. My grades may have suffered, but my conscience is clear, and my convictions are definitely made of titanium. My second lesson, I will always carry a torch for the cause. There is nothing more noble than fighting for what you hold dear, and I truly believe that the foundations of our nation are in trouble. I feel that fighting for the conservative cause is a noble path chosen only by a worthy few. Last, I will be proud that I made a difference on my campus. Without activists on the college campuses, young skulls of mush would blindly fold to the liberal dogma and continue to live in the progressive status quo.
Hi, everyone. As a college student at Cornell University, I think a lot about what I want to do after I graduate. Needless to say, the economy is something that really worries my classmates and me. Namely, we're unsure about the poor job market that we're about to enter into. After graduating from Cornell, my classmates and I will have spent the last 4 years working hard in an intense academic environment while racking up thousands of student loans. And yet, we're not quite sure if we will be able to find a job, or if we do, if it will be self-sufficient. Add the new Obama taxes into the picture, and you can understand why jobs are a large concern to fellow college students and me. Well, that's why my fellow classmates and I were shocked when my oceanography professor told my class of 600 students earlier this fall that focusing on jobs, jobs, jobs during the election is, quote unquote, generationally selfish. During a lecture right around election time, he focused on the importance of making global warming issues our #1 priority in electing the next president. He compared demanding jobs to reckless partying He said that if we party now by creating jobs, we are being generationally selfish because we don't care about the fish. When I think of generational selfishness, I think of our national debt, which is currently over $16 trillion. It is my generation and my children's generation that will have to pay off these loans. It is my classmates and I who are going to be the ones to have to enter into this job market. During another lecture, the same oceanography professor brought in a guest lecturer to speak in front of the class. The class was strategically placed right after Hurricane Sandy and right before Election Day. He stood there nodding in approval as a guest professor showed our class multiple political YouTube videos. Video after video showcased Obama as an articulate candidate who cares deeply about the environment, in contrast to unflattering videos of Romney. I couldn't believe the blatant bias. We were told that if we didn't like Hurricane Sandy, we should keep in mind which candidate would prevent future natural disasters. Amazing! According to the liberals, Obama can control the weather. Meanwhile, in DC, my friends in the Cornell and Washington program were told by their TA that if he found out that any of them were conservative, that he would fail them on their final paper. He was being completely serious, and the conservatives in the class felt that their grades were in jeopardy if they revealed any hint of conservatism during the class. Now, our student assembly and faculty members are trying to enact a social justice requirement. They are considering multiple options. Their favorite option requires that each Cornell professor focus on an aspect of how their class relates to social justice on the syllabus. This makes absolutely no sense for many of our classes. My engineering friends wonder what the social justice of calculus is going to be like. But my experience on a liberal campus has not discouraged me. Instead, it has taught me the opposite. During my sophomore year, I joined the Cornell Review, our conservative newspaper on campus. This year, I'm an editor and work with conservative students across campus to add our perspective to the campus dialogue. In protest of the social justice requirement, my friends and I have started a petition that we call Students for Academic Liberty. It is our goal to reach out to all students and protest the school's blatant attempt at indoctrination. While Cornell will continue to be a liberal campus, I am encouraged by all of my fellow students who recognize the problem and are fighting out against academic discrimination.
We do have a few minutes for questions. If there are any questions for any of our panelists up here that you'd like to ask. Oh. Hold on one second. Wait for the mic so we can get you on the video.
Have any of your professors said anything about Al Gore's recent sale?
Not yet.
I work with coordinate the student outreach programs for the Freedom Foundation in Washington State, and we've had good success in getting onto a few of the larger public universities, which have a lot of the same problems you described. But one of the interesting challenges I've faced is getting young women involved in our student groups. And so as female leaders and conservatives yourselves, how would you suggest reaching out to more young women to get them involved and start the discussion with them?
Well, on my campus, we've been trying to do recruitment efforts by literally trying to find, I guess you could say, conservative markets, if that even exists, on the college campus. And a lot of that exists in people who are studying business, as well as people who are in the fraternities and sororities, because a lot of people in Greek life happen to lean right on a lot of issues, especially on economic issues. A lot of them protest the smoking ban, which is actually being instituted on campus. It's actually going to prevent any student from smoking on campus. They're going to have to drive off of campus just to light up a cigarette. And a lot of fraternities and sororities were upset with that. So So what a lot of people in my club did is we're gathering a lot of women in our organization who care about conservative values to actually visit the sororities and give a presentation on what our club does and what we plan to do in the future. And we also enforce that, conservatism for us, it's not all about the gender issues. It's about all of the issues. We're not thinking from our waist down. So I try to emphasize those, but I would definitely visit organizations that have a lot of women in them, especially women that may lean right, like in business programs. We have a Women in Business programs who I'm visiting with next week to try to recruit more members.
I'd also like to speak to that from the Claire Booth Luce standpoint. One of the reasons that we promote our lecture program so much and send these great women out to college campuses is that often just seeing that great woman role model who's standing up there and saying, I'm conservative and I'm a woman and it's okay if you are too, oftentimes that is enough to inspire women to then say, that person is just like me, so I want to get involved in this club or in this group. And that's one of the reasons that our lecture program is so important. It's an excellent way to grow membership in clubs and get women active in a conservative movement. Okay, another question? Oh, we have one back here.
What advice would you give to a future college student who's probably going to be attending a liberal campus?
Well, I'll start by saying that pretty much every campus is liberal, so that's going to be a problem anywhere you go, unless you go to Hillsdale or Bob Jones. Take your pick, or Grove City. But honestly, the best thing to do is to read a lot. Start reading not just like modern political pundits books that they're great and you should read them to know what's going on currently, but also do a lot of reading of the original political philosophers, the original political scientists, because most of them actually are like the foundations of conservatism. You should read some Machiavelli. You should read some Plato. Plato's good. You should read some, trying to think of others. There's a bunch that you can read, and another good way to do that is once you get into a university, find a class that actually studies that, because your university does probably have that. I know that in my political science department, we have several political philosophy classes that are actually very right-leaning because of the nature of the subject. Also, I would suggest getting into a group of friends that share your beliefs, because if you're spending time with people who are constantly assaulting your personal values, it's going to be very difficult for you to hold on to those values, because like everything else in college, people fall to peer pressure.
Can I say something? My advice would be to confront your fears right away. Whatever it is that you're afraid of, confront that immediately, because I spent so much of my freshman year being afraid of what, the fears became bigger than they were in reality, and once I confronted them and faced them, then suddenly I could do anything.
I just wanted to add a point too. I've always been nervous, I previously was nervous when I originally entered college. I'm a political minority. What should I do? And there was actually a visitor who came to one of our college Republicans meetings, and he was running for Senate at the time in Maryland. And he said something really interesting to me. I told him, I'm afraid that I'm going to lose friends over this, or I'm going to, lose my good grades over this. And he said, Caroline, would you rather lose your friends or lose your country? And I think that's kind of a good point, because obviously I don't want to lose my friends, but I think it's also important to kind of maintain strength in a lot of your political views. So you can also kind of frame your campus activism experience by framing yourself as, the rebel group, because we really are the rebel group. Young people like challenging the establishment. They like challenging what the status quo is. So you can market your organization, if you join Campus Republicans or Campus Conservatives. Market yourself as the rebel organization that defies what the administration is imposing on the students.
Do we have another question? I would like to ask one of each of our panelists. This is something all of you can speak to. You all gave us some examples of bias on your campus. I would like for each of you to share with our audience what was maybe the most shocking instance of bias that you experienced.
It's like everything. I don't know. I think just because it happened recently, the incident with the SEIU woman. I mean, I think that was just really scary. I face bias in my college classes, but that's kind of expected. If someone literally says, "Oh, a representative from college liberals or whatever is going to come to your event and talk, or going to come to a college event and talk, and we want you to address issues there too," it really sucks to walk in and see this woman who works for this union and probably has so much more experience working with, I guess you could say, mobs on a college campus. So I think that was really challenging, and that was probably one of the toughest things that I had to do. But in the end of the day, I kind of stuck with my gut and just said what I believed in.
The worst moment of bias that I encountered actually was this fall. In the backlash that occurred from my Investors Business Daily article. It wasn't just the political science professor pulling me into her office. I actually got reprimanded by the ROTC department as well, because as a member of the military, you're not supposed to criticize the president. And my article was not political. It didn't pick parties. It didn't say anything bad about the president, but it was ideological. And my commander told me that that was a very thin line that I have to tread lightly in order to keep from getting in trouble in the future. And he also told me, there again, I wouldn't be looking around here for law school recommendation letters as a result of my article. And I had girls in my sorority who read my article actually call the standards chair of my sorority and ask her to reprimand me for being unsisterly, because my article also mentioned the university's rape policy, that if a woman has a regretful night, she can accuse a man of rape. And I personally think that that's on you if you do something that you regret. That's not a case of rape. And one of my really close friends who is the standards chair of my sorority actually approached me about it and said, I'm not going to do anything because you didn't mention our sorority in the article, so I can't punish you for it. But just know that there are a lot of girls who are very upset with you because, to be perfectly honest, there are a lot of girls who have experienced that night that they regret, and they do consider themselves rape victims. And as a result, there are a lot of girls who aren't very happy with me now.
I have a question for you. I know you're a liberal professor.
Oop, hold on one second. Let's get you on the microphone. It's okay.
I know your liberal professor does not read Investors Business Daily. They usually take it and burn it. How did he find out that you had written this article? Because I'm very sorry, and I'm so proud of you for writing that article. And I'm sorry that you speaking your beliefs caused you that. What happened to our freedom of speech? What happened to this? This is shocking.
Well, I think parents sent it to the administration, and the administration sent it to my advisors, and it got circulated around the different departments that way. That's the only thing I can deduce.
But you mean liberal parents for reading Investors Business Daily? That's where
No, conservative parents.
Well, the conservative parents, but why would they not think this was just wonderful that you wrote? That's why I'm confused.
Well, parents were concerned about sending their students to Furman after the article, because I mentioned that the political science enrollment was down this year because people read the article and didn't want their students enrolling, and they were honestly reaching out to the political science department because they were concerned and they wanted to be reassured that their students wouldn't be discriminated against for being conservative. But it's interesting because the only professor who actually encouraged me during that whole process was a liberal professor who he was my study abroad professor. I have a really great relationship with him, and he approached me after class and said, read your article, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, him too. And he said, you know what? You're doing the right thing. This is what you believe, and I may not agree with you, but I support you because you're exercising your free speech. He was like, it doesn't matter what they say, they can't touch you, and you're going to be out of here in 6 months anyways. So, yeah.
My example sort of also relates to free speech and writing conservative pieces. My freshman year, this university sponsored Keith Olbermann to come and visit. And apparently, so he's a Cornell alum, and Ann Coulter's a Cornell alum, and Ann Coulter is the one who founded the Cornell Review at Cornell. And so during Keith Olbermann's Q&A, he was asked what he thinks about the Cornell Review, to which he took a coffee and he took his water and he poured his water on the stage, and then he took the copy of my newspaper and put his foot on it and used it to wipe up the water on the stage in front of every student in the audience. And he goes, this is what I think of the Cornell Review. So after that, you feel a little targeted as a journalist for the newspaper, that he has just gone in front of the student body and used to wipe across the floor. So I would say that is an example of bias that sticks out in my mind.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you ladies so much.